our questions are around what is the influence of mediated forms of dance, so TV, YouTube, social media, on students' expectations of choreography and training in local, national and international contexts. How might a collaborative learning in dance be approached? What are the opportunities and limitations of a digital technology in its capacity to engage students in working relationally in different levels and in mixed ability groups? And the third part of this, the embedding of technology and digital culture in teaching might help us to feel connected, but does not necessarily provide an environment for substantial relating. So this has an impact on the way that students are able to work to collaborate together, of course, to be present, and to develop an individual voice. So the third.
Yeah, the third is a bit shorter. It's questions that concern the professionalization of dance. So how do dance practitioner teachers ensure a relevant fit between technical skills and career choices with the expanded field of dance? So dance and health, dance and community, dance and performance, dance and choreography, dance and education, all those strands and potential possible path for students. How does it link to the dance technique, or how do we make it connect? How do dance practitioners, teachers respond to the risk that the breadth of techniques and skills required today prevent us from engaging students with the depth of each of them? So that's not a new idea. The idea of the hired body that was articulated by Susan Foster, for instance, is I think still relevant and a concern and a question. What are the artistic and pedagogical strategies that could help students being mindfully present to a breadth of approaches?
So we defined these three related topics, and then we asked these different dance practitioners and scholars and thinkers and artists to offer some contributions, some 5-minute contributions each, acting as individual provocations for our collective thinking.
On one hand, students tell us they want to learn the new styles of structured improvisation, like Garde and flying low. They tell us that that's the style that everyone's choreographing in, and the old techniques are out of date and out of style. And I've heard that more than once. Furthermore, in a time when new and constantly changing urban styles are so popular, who are we to tell them what styles to do? Are we stifling their creativity by prescribing techniques that they should be learning? History tells us that the greatest inventions happen out of rebellion and out of deficiency. On the other hand, perhaps, there are still great skills to be learned from the classic styles. Should we encourage the students to stand on the shoulders of giants and try and assume the bodies of the pioneers who were making work, in some cases back in the 1930s? That's 88 years ago. It's a long time ago. Is it still relevant? I would argue yes. Of course, the students today, they think that they can buy knowledge, and that's all they're going to need for the world, and that they'll have it sorted when they graduate. And I do try and tell my students that that's not the case. I've been learning ever since I left my training. And going back to the earlier point, is there any weight in Schechter, Newson and Kahn's comments about training in the UK? Do we offer them enough? Certainly when graduates attend my company's open class and our graduate training programme that we offer called DASP, their technique seems to be somewhat basic. Their command of how to use their tool is one-dimensional and without a doubt only concerned with the power moment.
Because when I meet the first years, when they arrive, they actually, most of them, have no experience of what it is to stand in a technique class. They don't know what that word dance technique class, what that kind of phrase means, because they're used to learning phrases or making their own work. It's what it seems to be very much transforming into in the kind of college and school experience, that you do a lot of making on yourself, but with very limited information coming in to tell you what kind of tools you have to make with. And I find that quite sad in many ways, that the body hasn't experienced a range of kind of stuff, ways of moving to draw on. And I'm not saying that's true of all colleges and schools, because I'm sure there are some amazing places out there that cram it in regardless of what the curriculum's trying to tell them to do. But it seems from my experience that there's a lot of kind of non-technical information coming in. But I'm always talking about ballet in contact improv because in a way they feel so far apart in their thinking that I feel like I need to be the catalyst to draw them together.
An eclectic approach seems to best serve an eclectic cohort and one that will move forward into a range of contexts. What we perhaps lose along the way is being able to attend to the rigour of any one training focus. And perhaps we are trying to sow the seeds for those who want to delve further, to find opportunities alongside their studies to become immersed and self-directed within a particular area. If we teach these skills to attend to learning independently, certain students will go further. Talking about kind of my own approach to making my technique classes, I kind of see it as a choreography in itself, an opportunity to bring in elements that cross over to creativity and performance, whether it be rhythmic constructs, use of weight, momentum, breath, shifts in facing, positioning in space, transitioning in and out of the floor. So the range of activity comes with issues of having to accept that for some students, the perfecting of movement may come at a price for the breadth of the experience that I'm trying to offer them. What is the balance between students' expectations of what dance is when they arrive to us and what we give them to dance? It needs to have some alignment, or students seem to lose that motivation again.
People. Their engagement with dance now happens at home on their computers, happens in their hand on their phones. You'll see like stream after stream of sort of battle videos of people who've gone to class and uploaded their videos and things. And you'll get kids who actually, maybe for sake of money, maybe for sake of access, that's where their learning stops, here. This is where they pick it up now. And so I think there's this generation of kids who switch off really, really quickly, as we all know, when someone's put in front of them. And I think it is this lapse in when you're learning this movement, it's not necessarily for the end product, it's about deepening your understanding of your body. So I think that's something I'd want to encourage in myself, and I think that as a team we can keep encouraging that in the students that we're engaging. And I wonder how many of us engage with our students as artists. In another sort of commercial industry kind of sense, everything needs to happen yesterday. So you're in the room and there's 10 seconds of time where they're kind of like, great, I need you to do this by the time I get back, it needs to be done, fantastic. And that moment there is you securing your job and your future jobs. Therefore, there's no such thing as, I'll come back tomorrow and I'll have it. No, you have it today. And I wonder, again, that situation is not for every student, a point I'll come back to. Pressure. Is it okay for me to put that much pressure on a student now to prepare them for that? Or is it the kind of thing where I'd really present myself as the guiding and the coaxing and the, come on, it's okay, you got it, it's all right, it'll happen tomorrow. Do I start putting that pressure in? No. Like there are a lot of styles connected to popular music now. And I agree that it's worth a watch, like 3 minutes of watching it on YouTube, spending that time to just see what the young artists in your room are seeing. It can really just help bridge that gap and let them know that you're part of this fabric. And also, it can help us not feel fixated on it's this way or no way. We're supposed to keep it current. We're supposed to keep it alive, or it's boring.
Whatever technique is taught, I think it's really important to acknowledge and situate the values that they come from, and it somehow offers students the choice of whether they're going to buy into that particular set of values or not. Like, career resilience depends on a lot more than technical ability or technical training. Career resilience, or somehow the point of education is, a lot of the time, it's to develop a network of peers, and it's through your network of peers and a cohort that you sort of lead with, that you build the language together with, that you begin to move forward in the world and form relationships. But what I would be looking for when I work with other dancers is the ability to commit, the ability to make choices, the ability to know why you're doing what you're doing. So really understanding what you're doing on stage.
The technical skills, if I just use that term very broadly, for me, they require rigour and discipline and commitment, and these are desirable, as some might say, they're crucial in enabling students to realise their potential. And I feel that they can be difficult qualities to foster within the culture of higher education. The actual bringing of one's body into class, and the obvious implications that that has on technique. It seems that tensions at the moment exist for me between feeding the industry and employability and feeding the art form.
I value and I see value increasingly in the professional practice, of which I think our curriculum should continually try to reflect, process-led modes of working. I, of course, want to educate and nurture this value of process and current choreographic practices and thinking for my students. The question, what if there was no assessment product to be made and we could foreground choreographic process to see what came about through our working together? But in being part of the validation processes in HE institutions, the frameworks in which we have to design our programs and write our modules, before we even deliver them, are very challenging to foreground and place value on process and process-led approaches. Module descriptor templates, for instance, are formulaic and they serve the institution. The templates and frames needed to run a program, including these module descriptors, are coming from the academy, which we know is historically bound to valuing knowing that, unless we're valuing knowing how. What I question today is how much I'm adapting to fit the institution and its structures, and how much the institution is willing to shift and change to enable me, us, to innovate for best pedagogical practices.
So I also straddle as a teacher this desire to stimulate and encourage and enable, with the sometimes need to just stay with and drill down and not compromise. So some of the ways that I try and do that in the studio is to think about the ways in which we can dialogue together, the ways in which we can share information together, the ways in which we can have a reflective practice. Is current in my own research at the moment, this idea in which there are many dimensions to the work that we're doing in terms of thinking through semantics and set materials, and that exploration as a process of finding is really key to that. That comes back to this idea of not having something fixed. And I think in terms of trying to generate ways of feeling that embodied knowing is growing, that exploration for me is key, and if I can enable my students to recognise that there is so much pleasure to be had, but so much progress to be found through this explorative journey, then I'm onto something, or we're onto something together.
However, what seems clear is that amidst the instability of experimentation, exploration and play that we try to get our students to engage with, dance students seem to desire something more certain, something more secure, more tangible, and dance technique often seems to respond to that need. Although there can be the assumption that training in classical or codified techniques is outdated, in response to the theme of bricolage, I'd like to propose that perhaps this is not always the case. Discussing the notion of bricolage as a research methodology, Robin Nelson suggests that when different elements are put at play through deliberate and careful juxtaposition, this can enable new insights to emerge. Indeed, through deliberate and careful juxtaposition of modern and postmodern approaches to technique, learners can be invited to engage their bodies in diverse and different ways. And I was kind of thinking of this as almost like a tasting of different bodily experiences, but again recognising that tension between breadth and depth that's been touched on several times. resonating with the notion of bricolage again, Susan Foster remarks the practical participation of a body in one or more particular disciplines makes it a body of ideas. And in relation to this idea, I'm often asked by undergraduate students whether in order to progress they need to somehow forget training in a previous technique such as ballroom or breakdancing. And I'm often struck by this question. And it makes me think about how can we enable our students to make really well-informed choices about what might be useful to take forward and what might be useful to leave behind.
The sort of tradition is that you went and learned a particular kind of technique, or you went and learned from a place. Some schools are named after the company that you're going to then be trained towards. And that in fact we're in that same place where the kind of movement that people are going to be doing when they leave their training doesn't really exist yet. It's the same thing, that we're in this place where we can't really train people for a particular job. Maybe we've compromised on some of the things that are really valuable in terms of being an artist in order to fit into the sort of higher education academy. Having worked in the States a lot, dance departments in some of those universities have been there for over 100 years, whereas in England we're sort of it's pretty new really, having dance departments in universities. We haven't really defined for ourselves how we talk about or what it looks like, what creative thinking looks like in our bodies. We're still kind of adhering to this idea that it's something that's going to be on the page, or at least it's proof of it's going to be on the page, the internet. And the internet allows you to receive information. So the university is no longer the kind of secret hub where you get the key to go in and get the information. The information is out there. But we haven't caught up in education still with that. We still sort of think that, we'll give you the secret and then you'll know what's going on. But they have, and I think that kind of disparateness means that they are treating us a little bit like Google, really. Like Google has information, they have information. So if I ask the right question, they'll tell me the right answer. And if I don't answer the right question, it might be because they're not computing my question properly. And so I need it's about getting this right answer and not about critical thinking.